College football is changing on a moment-by-moment basis. And if you're sitting here as a Big 12 fan, as a TCU fan, and you're like, I just want to see my team play games, but I want them to be in the best position possible. I want them to be in the big leagues. What does that look like? What does that mean? We'll talk about that next and more on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. We're brought to you today by Gametime. If you need tickets, especially last-minute tickets, hit up the Gametime app and do that today. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice next to me, it's a crossover edition today. It's Locked On Big 12's very own Drake Toll. You can find him at Drake C. Toll on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. But Drake is here with us today because, Drake, it's like every couple days there's a new story about is the ACC crumbling? Is there a super league that's going to form? Who's going to be involved? And so you're on this all the time. This is like, you cover this really well. You're seeing the news break. You're giving your opinions on it. For Big 12 fans, and I guess specifically TCU fans, who are like, all right, we survived like the first wave of this. We're still together. We're still a functioning conference. We're in a lot of ways maybe stronger than we were, at least from a like unity standpoint.
Yeah.
What's kind of the best case scenario, or, where do they fall in this constantly shifting landscape in the world of college sports right now?
I think the first thing you look at is 3-4 years ago when Texas and Oklahoma officially decided to depart from the Big 12. I vividly remember watching 365 Sports, another college football show, where two of the hosts said, that's it. It's done. The Big 12's over. There's no way the Big 12 can survive past this. That was the sentiment at ESPN, at Fox. It was the sentiment from Pac-12 officials that the first conference to die in realignment was supposed to be the Big 12. So we can't forget the context of where this conference is today and the position it is in because of Bob Bowlesby, of all people, adding BYU and the like. And then Brett Yormark coming in and taking away Utah and Arizona State, as well as Colorado. One thing that I mentioned that really shows the positive position the Big 12 is in, and I said this on a show on my podcast earlier this week, is UConn and Gonzaga over the past summer of 2023, were in the fold for the Big 12. Brett Yormark ended up balking at both of those schools because he said, and I quote, there was a dream scenario that came to the conference, and that was the 4 Pac-12 schools that he added into this league. Now it's 16 teams. The current state of this league is as strong as it's been from the standpoint of all 16 teams want to be here. Everybody here, Utah, Colorado, Arizona State for the Pac-12, needed this conference as a life raft. BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, this is their opportunity to play in the Power 5, now Power 4. And the other 8 teams survived. You made it out. You're still alive, and you're in a power conference. It's the best spot you could have asked the Big 12 to be in when we thought the league was going to die a couple of years ago. So if you're a TCU fan, a Texas Tech fan, an Oklahoma State fan, you were ready. You remember, Stephen, we were having conversations of, does TCU go to the Pac-12? Can they somehow get, find a different location? The ACC, would they take them? And now instead, we're having conversations about ACC schools being in the Big 12, again, using our league as a life raft, which is only good for Brett Yormark and us.
There was an entire summer where, everybody was basically doing Big 12 eulogies on a weekly basis and talking about that. But it has changed a lot. And you talk about Bob Bowlesby. Bob did do some great things towards the end. It was interesting to watch him, though. It kind of felt like Bob, like there's a scene in The Office where Jim gets a new boss and he's at this conference and Michael's there and him and his new boss have a little inside joke going on.
Yeah.
And Michael Scott says, man, I love inside jokes. I hope to be a part of one someday. And that sort of felt like Bob Bowlesby in the world of conference commissioners. He was just always kind of a step behind, not really there with the power brokers making decisions. How has Brett Yormark changed that perception? Why has he been such a good fit? And how has he been so forward-thinking for the league right now?
I read an article probably 6 months ago that said that Brett Yormark is great for the Big 12 because he's a sports fan first. And I can't disagree with that more. The sentiment of the article was that he grew up watching, the MLB and the NBA, and the guy knows ball. And I agree that he knows ball, but I don't think he is putting the sports aspect of the Big 12 first. He's putting revenue first. He's putting the lifeblood of the conference, which is money, first. And you have to. What George Kliavkov got off on was, maybe we could just create this conference of champions. That's the name. It's the Conference of Champions of the Pac-12. We can just ride that to the sunset. We've got plenty of teams that are happy enough to never leave. In the ACC, Jim Phillips said, we'll create the best basketball conference in the nation. Stephen, I mentioned this on almost every show now this week because it's something you have to get through to people. Can't think of Kansas State, for example, who in 2023, the year they went to the Elite Eight in basketball, and had a pretty good football season, went to the Big 12 championship and won it. They made $33-ish million off of football and about $8 million off of basketball. That is a match. In every other sport they have lost money. They didn't make any money on any. That is what is bringing the revenue to these schools. Brett Yormark understands that. He's going to lean into football. You can have an unbelievably successful basketball season, but it is still such small potatoes compared to football, and Yormark is going to continue to build on that. So those that are saying, let's become the best basketball conference in the country, the ACC tried to do that, and that's why they're about to not exist anymore. So from a Yormark standpoint, what makes him so good is that he is a businessman first. He is putting revenue first and putting the betterment of this conference from a money standpoint at the A1 and fighting for the league. That's why in a couple of years, we have this look-in clause, the college football playoff, where we all learn if the Big 12 is expanded, that this league can make more money, can get closer to the Big 10 and the SEC, and I think that's where you want to go.
So you talked about the unity earlier, which is a good point. I mean, yes, everybody wants to beat each other in the Big 12, but it does feel like there's also a sense of let's pull the same rope. Let's kind of have like an SEC type of pride with what we're doing, rooting for each other outside of the conference itself. What's your best guess? In the ACC, you have multiple universities that are just openly like challenging the relationship that they have with the conference. How do these dominoes kind of fall? What does it mean for the current teams in the league and sort of how, the dynamic shifts if a Florida State or Clemson, some of those Carolina schools become open here in the next few years?
One thing, Stephen, that I've actually changed my mind on a lot here is relevance, the word relevance. Like Clemson 15 years ago, we didn't care about them. Nobody cared about Clemson. They were a middle-of-the-road revenue team. They were honestly way behind most Power 5 teams. Then what they did is they won their way to relevance. They won their way to a great valuation from the College Football Playoff Committee. So as the ACC falls apart, I think Clemson's one of those teams that's so relevant. The Big Ten, the SEC are right there. They would like to scoop them up. A team that doesn't really feel that right now is Miami. Had all this happened in 2003, they'd be in a great spot. But it's not 2003. We are 20 years removed from Miami being at the apex of college football. So now they're the has-been. They're the old darling, and therefore the Big 12 has an opportunity to snatch those guys up because they aren't as valuable as they were 2 decades ago and could hopefully, if they join us, build back into that brand. Then look at Louisville. When Louisville's good at football, they're one of the top 25 revenue teams in the country because basketball carries so much. The KFC Yum Center is one of the greatest palaces for college basketball in the country. And a Virginia Tech or an NC State even has their own revenue stream that would help the Big 12 conference. If UNC and Virginia are off the table, and it sounds like both those schools are, there's still a good pod of the Pitts and the NC States and the Louisvilles and the Miamis. I think the Big 12 has a fighter's chance at.
The Athletic article that was discussing the Super League, 80 teams, 8 divisions, conferences sort of go away. If you had a percentage right now, Drake, on how likely you think something like that would be, what are you buying this at all? Do you think this has legs, or this is just an interesting idea by a committee?
I don't think there's anything less than 0%, but man, I wish there was for this question. I really wish there was, because if you read the Athletic article, which a majority of it was a fluff piece, by the way, just to keep you from getting to the middle of the article, where they reveal to all of those reading that the Big 10, the SEC, and the Big 12 won't respond to the phone calls of the people trying to put together a Super League, and that Fox and ESPN are boxing out their properties from ever letting this happen. Guess who controls all the money? Fox and ESPN, the Big 10, the SEC. If the power play, like if you have tier 2, those 20 members of this committee trying to put it together, that they're in the tier 2 of power in college football. That's a lot of fun. but you never get past tier one when tier one has all the money. You can have the name. You can be the number 2 guy at the NFL. You can be a college president in the Big Ten. But if your conference, if ESPN, if Fox, if the money doesn't want to go to a Super League, it's never going to happen. You can't fund it. It is a pipe dream, a fever dream, an impossibility.
There's a lot of new teams. There's a lot of storylines. What's going to happen in the Big 12 this year? We'll ask Drake Toll next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. Locked On Big 12, a crossover edition here on the Locked On Network. We tell you about it all the time, FanDuel, and you need to go there because it's the best place to start making some money, to start betting today. It's playoff time in the NBA, NHL, baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, they always have these great deals going on. New customers, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Again, that's $150 in bonus bets, and that's win or lose. Sometimes I tell you, you put a $5 bet down, you win that bet, you get these bonus bets. This is win or lose, $150 in bonus bets for new customers. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon or download the easy-to-use FanDuel app. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Bringing Drake back into the conversation here on Locked On Horned Frogs, Locked On Big 12. So, Drake, I imagine when you're putting together way too early Big 12 power rankings, I saw your show the other day. You broke down a good article from Heartland Sports about the odds this year in the Big 12. You got all these teams now. There's a lot to consider. So I guess first off, of the new group coming in, Utah obviously has some great pedigree recently. Arizona's coming off a new season.
Yeah.
Of the new blood, which team do you think is most likely to make some serious noise in their first year in Big 12 conference play?
Well, I don't mean to be too poppy here, but understand that Colorado and Deion Sanders will carry the most headlines in the Big 12 again this season. They have arguably the best quarterback in the country, might be the cover athlete on EA Sports, is one of the few guys they're giving a 99 overall ranking. Now, I don't think EA Sports determines who the best quarterback is, but you got to give some attention to the kid that's picking up that kind of love from a brand like EA. And I don't think Colorado is going to be as bad as everyone projects, but there is no getting past how good Utah is. And really, the talent of Arizona is something we still have to look at despite the coaching change. But at the very root of it, Utah, Kyle Whittingham, what they bring back, if everybody stays healthy, which has been the issue for them over the last 365 days, post-winning back-to-back Pac-12 championships, if health is a non-factor, Utah is your Big 12 champion. They also have a fairly easy schedule in comparison to the rest of the conference. I think the Utes the ones you got to watch out for, and that's not even just the new teams. Overall, they feel like they are the favorite right now, and it feels warranted.
Yeah, they're good. They're consistent. Talking about another team that sort of fits that bill, just annoyingly consistent and physical, the Kansas State Wildcats.
Yeah.
So the ceiling for this group, because Will Howard did a great job. I know, he was beloved there. He did some special things. But with Avery Johnson at quarterback, how much more explosive, how much better do you think he makes K-State if he's consistently getting reps at that position this year?
I have seen too many times in college football, there's always the backup quarterback is the most famous guy in town. He's the most popular guy in town at most universities, even with some high caliber quarterbacks. Think back to Oklahoma. They had Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams. Everybody was begging for Caleb Williams. Sometimes the fans are right in that regard. And here, that's the hope in Manhattan, is that Avery Johnson is that guy. He is more dynamic with his legs. He is one of the best dual threat mobile quarterbacks that is in the Big 12 coming into next season. And he's just wily. I think that's the best word to describe him, is he's a wily quarterback. Get him inside the 5-yard line. He's not afraid to pull you over and get in, but he's also got finesse. For the Wildcats this year, that's established, but everything else offensively, who's going to throw to? If he's got to throw the ball, they lost their top 2 pass catchers. What are they going to do? And I understand that they have used the offseason to plug and play and fill holes, and they'll bring guys up, and I'm confident Chris Kleiman is one of those coaches that has somebody in his back pocket, development in his back pocket. However, until we see that, I'm not sure if we can go 100% all in on Kansas State, and right now I have them sitting around 5 or 6 in my way too early Big 12 power rankings.
It would be hard to describe to someone who didn't follow college football last year how much of a story Colorado was for the first month of the season.
Tough.
And I partly blame the TCU Horned Frogs for this. I went on your show. I was very confident. I was like, listen, Drake, they're going to cover. They're going to roll over this team. It's an all new roster. We don't really know what's happening. Well, listen, they came into Fort Worth. They won. I mean, even when they lost to Colorado State, it was like everybody was watching that game. It was just every week. It was a huge event. You talked about Shadur Sanders. He's a huge storyline as well. I guess what are kind of the strengths and weaknesses of this group, and how much is the powers that be in the Big 12 probably rooting for Colorado to be good this year because of the media attention that they can command?
I am confident that where the Big 12 has gone when it comes to the trenches, this conference is very underrated. You have to have an established offensive line, guys who have been in your system for a period of time to be successful. That's almost foolproof, that statement. And Colorado's got good talent they just brought in, but we haven't seen it click yet. So when they play Kansas State, when they play Texas Tech, when they play Utah, when they play even Kansas now or Oklahoma State, will they be ready in the trenches? I don't think we can say yes. However, here's what's going to happen. I've seen it. You've seen it. Front row seats. Matt Rule effect. His first season, he is going to be bad. His second season, he's going to be perfectly mediocre. I bet Nebraska goes 7-5 this year. One of their 5 losses will be Colorado. Colorado will beat North Dakota State, Nebraska, Colorado State, and Baylor to start 4-0. They'll be number 22 in the country. They'll be the talk of the town. Is Deion Sanders back? And they might get slapped in the face in Orlando against UCF, but that's a winnable game. There's a world in which they're 5-0 going into their bye and coming off playing Kansas State. And in that world, they are all of the rave, whether they deserve it or not. Their schedule early is more favorable than some, and therefore Colorado could take the whole conference by storm from really week 3 on.
Can Jalen Daniels, I mean, is this the year where he stays healthy? After that Illinois game last year, Drake, I mean, there was like legitimate Heisman talk about him. He's electric. He's really, really good. Lance Leipold has turned that thing around. Where do they kind of fall in your eyes? And is it really just as much about his health as anything else?
I think Lance Leipold has proven, you can go back to the Oklahoma game last year that was so hard fought and tough. He's proven that with or without healthy players, his squad can adjust. Reminds me a lot of what Chris Kleiman's doing at Kansas State. It just feels like no matter what happens with their team, they're going to be there. They're going to be competitive down the stretch. That's what Kansas has become. We now have to erase from our brain everything we knew about the Jayhawks pre-Lance Leipold. He has been there long enough to take that culture completely out of the fold, and they're going to play some home games at Arrowhead Stadium this season, and they're going to shock some people. I think the Kansas Jayhawks have a legitimate chance to go 10-2 with the way their schedule shook out, like home games against Houston, home games against Iowa State and Colorado. I think all those are very winnable. Their road games at Baylor and BYU, they'll be favored in those as well at Arizona State. Just the shake they got from the conference. Give me the Jayhawks to go a long way.
New look offensive line, aggressive defensive coordinator in Andy Avalos, got rid of the scary 3-3-5 where you just stay back and don't do anything. Josh Hoover, legitimate starts last year, quality snaps, another year in the Kendall Briles offense. I can see it in your eyes, Drake Toll. You want to say it. You need to say it. Dark horse, turnaround year. Nobody's talking about them. That's where the TCU Horned Frogs thrive. You want to say it, Drake. You agree with me. I can tell.
All right. Go to the ad break and come back. Let's do a whole segment on TCU. Fine, you win.
All right. That's how we do it. That's how I force people to talk about my team on Locked On Horned Frogs.
That's good.
Gametime. We love the Gametime app here. I want to tell you a personal story because, we want to talk about sponsors here, but we want to make it like this is legitimate stuff that we use. The Rangers. They won the World Series last year. I loved it. Lifelong Rangers fan. I want to be at that home opener. It's the hottest ticket in town. I wanted to be there. I wanted to take my dad. It was a lovely moment when they won the World Series. It's a couple days before. I still don't have tickets. I didn't have expectations. I just stumbled upon the Gametime app. I was like, listen, I'm just going to look at this, see if I can find something, because the Gametime app is the best place to find last-minute tickets. You can browse through. They have flash deals. I scored 2 tickets, and these weren't like, I wasn't sitting at Texas Live watching this game. We had good seats. We paid less than $100. The fees, they have fees, but they're up front. And we were there. We were there for the home opener. It was fantastic. I bought them one day before the event. That's the type of experience you can have with the Game Time app. They have a great feature where you can see exactly what your view is going to be. You just look at it. It's like, all right, this is going to be my view of the game. You can get theater tickets, concerts, comedy shows, whatever you're interested in. Download the Game Time app today. Use that promo code Locked On. You get $20 off. Again, that promo code is Locked On College. You get $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app. It's the best place to get tickets. Do it today. So, Drake, when the season ended for TCU last year against Oklahoma, of course, everybody was disappointed. And I remember throwing a question out there like, okay, what has to change for the Frogs this upcoming season? And a lot of people said it's the defense. It's you gotta switch the defense up. But I remember you, because one thing that's great about Drake, he's always looking at the other side of things, finding different angles. You immediately said confidently, Kendall Briles. Got to get him out of here.
Yep.
They didn't do that. But I do think this is a huge year, not only for Kendall, but for Sonny Dykes, because if you're going to be offensive guru guy, that side of the ball has to be elite if this is going to work. So what's your expectation for a Josh Hoover-led offense and kind of this offensive coaching staff going into another season with, Kendall calling plays?
Well, I wore my Arkansas pullover today just for fun. That felt right. I feel like Kendall Briles leaves a lot to be desired in his offense, and did at TCU in his first season. I was not first and foremost. What a random hire! Just the name Briles on the sideline at TCU, and the question immediately was, is this going to be worth it? All right, you hired Briles, now it better pay off. And it didn't in year one. And a lot of times what people will get caught up on defensively is, oh, wow, the defense must suck, without really looking at the way the offense complements it. When your offense has a ton of 3-and-outs, when you're keeping your defense on the field, I look at a team like a Baylor, who I got to watch so closely last year, whose offense couldn't get off the ground because the defense was off the field in 2 plays because they had let up a 75-yard touchdown, right? There was never any consistency, or the defense gives up a massive play and the offense can't get things clicking, and the continuity's not there. For TCU, it felt like I saw a bit of that, but the opportunity to bring in Avalos, huge. The opportunity to bring in 20 commits in the transfer portal and have the number 2 class in the Big 12 this offseason, also huge. I wish the Frogs would have gotten bigger names on the offensive line in the transfer portal. Had there been more 4 stars, 5 stars in that category, I'd be more confident in TCU. But Steven, dare I say it, this reminds me a little bit of Sonny Dykes' first year at TCU. He did not. I do not think. I always try to judge a team's transfer portal rankings off of what they needed, what holes they plugged, and how they plugged them. Arizona State and Cincinnati are 2 teams that I think just went balls to the wall. I can say that. And said, we need this, we need that, we need, grab whoever you can get and put it together, and hopefully it works in the Big 12 next year. What TCU did was strategically attack the portal. What Sonny Dykes did when he first came to Fort Worth was strategically attack. He didn't bring in 50 guys like Deion Sanders. He said, here's what I need from this, here's what I need from that. We're going to put it all together. I am scared. I am scared, if I'm another Big 12 team, of what TCU has done on the defensive side of the ball with Andy Avalos and the additions from the transfer portal. Offensively, I need to see the offensive line, and I still haven't bought Josh Hoover. I still can't buy yet. Too young.
So that quarterback room, you got Josh, you have Ken Seals, transfer from Vandy, which seems kind of like a veteran backup situation. And then Haas Haney, true freshman from Aledo, one of those, Texas high school football powerhouses in the state. I guess, how much concern do you have if you're kind of basing the Hoover optimism on year 2 of a system, right, getting more familiar with it, processing better, all those things, that he's not going through spring practice right now because of some undisclosed injury?
Yeah, the one thing, Steven, I needed more than anything was to watch this kid during spring practice, was to see him during a spring game, was to see. And the reason why is, again, I'll go back to a school that I covered very closely. When Blake Shapen became the starter at Baylor, there was such a small sample size, and that sample size was very good. People were excited that he had stepped into that role. So you're waiting on him to develop. Max dug him. as he continued his TCU career, you're waiting on that guy to take the next step. We so often as college football fans default to, well, he's got a year under his belt. Oh, he's got 6 starts under his belt. Next year, he'll be better. It just doesn't work that way all of the time. It didn't for Max Duggan at TCU until the very end of his career. And for Hoover, a guy that I needed to see take that step in the spring and say, all right, now he's a leader. All right, now he's got complete confidence. You don't get any of that. So I have to sell on what you get out of Hoover right now, but I still don't think that TCU did that. Like, oh, Vanderbilt quarterback's kind of like the Alan Bowman thing. Let's just bring him in, and Alan Bowman ended up starting. So who knows? And for Haas Haney, we saw what Cade Klubnik did. We see some of these blue chip quarterbacks that come in, or even Quinn Ewers very early on, that just aren't there yet, got thrown in the fire too early. I hope it doesn't happen for Haney. If that's your red button, got to press it. Probably not a good sign for the Horned Frogs.
Okay, before you go, where does TCU fall in the Drake C. Toll Locked On Big 12 way too early power rankings? What are we looking at this year, Drake?
So everywhere I look, if I go to Athlon, if I go to Heartland, if I go across all Big 12 next, most people have TCU in the 10 to 11 spot. I've seen them maybe highest at 9. I've slotted TCU in the 8 range. They're going to be better than people expect. I would be unsurprised if the Frogs ended up picking up 8 wins this coming football season, which given their schedule is something that would be good. I mean, I think if you're a TCU fan, you get 8 wins. Very excited by that. Your first 3, 4, very winnable. Kansas is tough, but I got TCU going into the bye with wins against Stanford, LIU, UCF, SMU, and Houston. In that world, you have walked effectively into 5-1. All I need you to do is win 3 games down the stretch. I think TCU does it, at least with wins against Baylor, Cincinnati, and then the others are kind of a coin flip toss-up. Just give me a bowl game and I'm happy.
He's the deputy commissioner of the Big 12. I'm not sure if that's true, but it seems like a thing that we should say. At Drake C. Toll on Twitter. Subscribe to the Locked On Big 12 YouTube channel. Do it. Check out his coverage every day. Subscribe to Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day.